of the administrative machinery that you have in place. If you listen to social media, if you listen to some of the stories coming out of Paris, for me, I think the biggest challenge that we face is a lack of communication, communication to the athletes, communication between all the parties involved, and communication to the public. I really think that if we were able to, or if the powers that be had a better system to communicate things, also to document things, to ensure that you're going off, there's a team manual, there's a guide, there is how you do this, this is what we expect from you, for the managers, when you have your meetings, all of that. It's because every single story, George, I can assure you that we hear coming out of Paris has been with us from as way back as 1972. Only the names have changed.
Yep. Yeah,
right?
the narrative hasn't changed. The narrative hasn't changed. I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this, Anthony. Just some issues to tick off. Obviously, I'm not asking you to comment specifically on the Thomas Dodd allegations. Those are for the JOA to deal with directly. But I'm going to ask you general questions in line with what she has raised as challenges. If it is that we have a contingent of 60-plus athletes at an Olympic Games, as we do in Paris, is it feasible for every athlete to expect reasonably that their coaches will be given the kind of access to the Olympics that will allow them to have direct interaction? Is it feasible to have every athlete's coach in or around the athletes' village?
It's not feasible, right? Look at it this way. Accommodation is going to be a challenge. You have to look at what the athletes have achieved and their status. And sorry to say, everybody's not equal. So you are going to have some persons at a different level from within the cadre of athletes. And therefore, what needs to be done is that the policy has to be set as to who. I don't know if there's a policy, but you need a policy to say which athlete qualified to get their personal trainers there. There is a quota, so every athlete will not, irrespective of policy, every athlete will not get facilitated. So the question really is, based on the number of athletes in your delegation, what's the allocation of personal trainers? What's the allocation of officials? Because there's a table that guides you.
Yes.
Because the IOC and World Athletics, it cannot be an open house. And so they have a ratio, they have a chart which tells you for X number of athletes, you are going to get X number of rooms.
Yes.
You're going to get an office, you are going to get a room for your meeting, for your physio.
Yes.
You are going to assign a vehicle, maybe more than one vehicle. All of that is in a team manual, which the IOC would have prepared and shared with delegation. So it's not feasible to expect that every athlete will say, I need my personal coach.
I hear you on that. Good. And I asked that because she raised the issue, specifically Mrs. Thomas Dodd did, of not having her coach with her for the 2+ weeks that she was in the athletes' village. And she said this absence of her coach contributed to her performing below standards. Well, let me ask you this other one then. So we've settled the coach's issue. When it comes to the issue of the administrators, right, putting the athlete in a position to be able to perform optimally. And if you have a coach who covers an area that has several athletes. So in this instance, we know that Julian Robinson is in the camp as the throws coach, which means that any athlete in the throws can lean on him. Very experienced, highly respected, highly efficient. Does this soothe the itch, Anthony Davis, of someone not having their personal coach in a specific discipline, given that there's a coach in the camp who is appointed to deal with athletes in those varied disciplines?
I like your term, if it suits the athletes, and yes, it does. In all the coaches in-house in Paris now are very experienced. However, we must understand that athletes have little quirks. There are things that they are working on. And unless you have been working with a coach for a while, a new coach coming on board can only give you general guidance.
Yes.
And you have to be very, very careful, because Coach A might ask you to do something which you are not accustomed to doing. You develop a block because this is not what I've been doing. So essentially, from where I sit, there has to be, when you assign coaches to a group of athletes that they are not responsible for on a daily basis, there has to be consultation. And I'm not saying there was not, but there has to be consultation. The athletes need to outline what it is that we need to do. And so the best that J3 or JOA can do in terms of allocating the coaches is make sure that the ratio is okay, that you don't overburden a coach where you assign more persons than they can really supervise. And we also need to remember that technology is available. I have actually seen persons at the stadium getting a friend to video their run-up, send it to their coach who send feedback. I'm not saying that this is ideal, because being able to speak to the person at trackside makes a big difference. But the best that can be done, I think, is being done in terms of facilitating the personal coaches.
All right, good. So we've settled two issues that she raised. One, whether or not she is entitled to her personal coach. We agree that so many coaches couldn't be given access to the athletes. It's not feasible, one, and the IOC sets quotas for the availability of coaches per athletes, and if you're you can't exceed that quota because the rules are strict. And then two, there is a general coach for the general discipline, and even though athletes have their quirks, there is still someone in the village who can, with the team, that can act as a guide in that specific discipline. Notwithstanding the very important point you make that athletes have their own, let's use another word, Anthony, their own vicissitudes, and so their own things, they need this personal kind of assistance that maybe the general coach can't give. Stay where you are, Anthony. We're going to come back and continue this discussion. We're talking about the administration of the Olympics and whether or not the athletes have been put in place to deliver their capital efforts by the authorities by virtue of in light of this dispute between the national shot put champion Daniel Thomas Dodd, who has raged at the authorities. She says, based on what they have not done, they have not helped her to deliver a capital effort and qualify for that shot put final. More on Lead Story after these.
CVM Paris Podium. Yes, guys, don't forget you can tune in to watch at sunrise, CVM News at noon, and CVM News at 7 o'clock.
And listen, nightly at 8 p.m. you get the Paris Podium lowdown, everything that's happening. See, it happens right here at CVM.
Yeah, run past.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
Central Expressions, your best source for business, tourism, and entertainment. Tune in to Central Expressions on CVM TV, Sundays at 3 p.m. Repeat Fridays at 9 a.m. Central Expressions is brought to you by the Gulf View Hotel in the heart of Jamaica, from the hearts of Jamaicans. The Orbin Group, Real Essence Media, National PC Bank, Central Expressions, your voice, your culture.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
at a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
All right, guys, the news is in. You are loving MTM on CVM.
And for those who don't know, we are the Mitchells. I'm Wayne.
And I'm Tammy.
And you can come along with us on our journey every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Right here, you can see it happening on CVM TV.
Yeah, MTM on CVM.
See it happen, man. CVM man. MTM man. CVM man. See it happen, man. CVM man.
You're the sugar to my tea. Meet the Mitchell family.
The Jamaica Olympic Association in the line of fire. The national shot put champion Daniel Thomas Dodd effectively blaming the association for failures which she said contributed to her not making the final of the shot put event at the Paris Olympics. As I was telling you at the top of the show, the top 12 of course qualify for these field events finals. She finished 13th overall, well below what she's capable of, well below the mark she registered at the recent national championships at the National Stadium. And she said if it were better administration, she would be in the final. Her coach would have been with her for at least part of the 2+ weeks she has spent over there in Paris in the Athletes Village. And she says beyond that, the support given to field events athletes is poor when marked against what the support given to track athletes. And she says the poor administration is so bad that she feels compelled to tell Jamaicans all about it. Her view, of course, has been challenged by the president of the JOA, Chris Samuda, who says she's not telling the truth, who says that contrary to what she has said, a lot of support has been given to her and other field events athletes, and he has challenged her to back up her words. It's a challenge, beg your pardon, that she appears to have taken up. I'm speaking now with the man who was the former, he was in the running for presidency of the Jamaica Olympics Association. He lost that to Chris Samuda, and he is now talking to me about administration. My voice has changed, gentlemen, but it's because of a need for water. Anyway, Don Anderson, good evening. Welcome to Lead Story.
Hi, George. How are you doing? Let me correct you very quickly. I was never in a running for any position against Samuda. I was the vice president of the Olympic Association for 32 years. And I guess the reason I'm here is because I served as the head of Jamaica's delegation, chef de mission, for 5 consecutive Olympic Games, from Atlanta all the way through to London inclusive. So that's my real claim to fame, if you can call it that, but certainly not contending for any presidency with Chris Samuda. We were never in that same race at all. That's correct, sir.
Done. I'm happy you very much corrected that, because I was going to go into your record as chef de mission of multiple Olympic Games and your experience here, which of course is why we carried you here. Yes, of course, served for a long time as first vice president to Mike Fennell at the JOA, and I was having a particular difficulty, so I was blinded to the facts, and I'm happy that you've corrected that. Anyway, getting that out of the way, what you see happening in Paris now, do you accept that there is any failure on the part of the administration to have prepared for properly this Paris trip, or prepared enough to assist the athletes to the best level possible while they've been in the village, in camp in Paris?
Well, I'm not there, so I am kind of generalizing based on the information that I have been able to glean so far. And the mantra of every chef de mission, certainly it was mine, that the most important mission you have is to ensure that all the athletes, and I mean all the athletes, are given the best opportunity to perform to their fullest. So that's really what the chef de mission's role is. Now, I hear what she has said, and I really empathize with her a lot, because I know she has put in a lot of hard work, just like all the other athletes, really. And I can feel her disappointment. It's really something when you put in so much work and then you find that you're let down at the last moment by whatever factors. She's not pointing a finger at the Olympic Association. Now, I think a lot of the problems that have been identified so far in the Paris Olympics have a lot to do with one word, which is communication. Communication. And I think I heard Davis referring to it earlier on, because everything in the Olympic Games is on the basis of a quota system. There's a team calculator, team size calculator. So when you have a team of 62 officials, in other words, every official is determined on the basis of the size of your delegation. So your delegation is actually entitled to so many officials, including the number of managers in terms of coaches, in terms of assistant coaches or what have you, or personal coaches. So the system is very heavily quoted. And I can tell you that in Beijing, when I got there, I was delayed. I could not get into the village for 2 days because there was a minor discrepancy with one of the entries that was submitted. And we just get in because any way you try to include a particular individual, which is not in the calculated system, it throws it out.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to say that under no circumstances would any team be in a position where every athlete would be able to have a personal coach assigned to them. It's just not on.
Yes.
So the system doesn't allow for it.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
All right.
On the issue of the amount of support given to the athletes, would you agree, based on your extensive knowledge for the length of time you served as first VP, that field events athletes are marginalized, especially because the term marginalization suggests a deliberate action to treat one group in a poorer, in a lesser way than another group? Would you agree with that from Daniel Thomas Dodd or from any athlete about marginalization of field events athletes where support is concerned?
I don't think there's ever been a deliberate attempt to marginalize either field athletes or track athletes. The fact of the matter is that we've been highly successful in the track side of the track and field discipline. And from that perspective, maybe the track athletes have been afforded a slightly better kind of opportunity to perform. But I don't think that anybody could say there had been a deliberate attempt to marginalize either group. The fact of the matter is I'm very happy to see the field athletes coming into their fore right now, coming to the fore right now. And it might very well shift the thinking that perhaps we should be spending more effort than we've had in the past on field events, because we haven't really produced a lot in terms of field successes over the years. As you can see, the high jump is the first time we're qualifying for a final in 50 years. So there's been no deliberate attempt, as far as I know, to marginalize either the track athletes or the field athletes. I think everybody has gone into the games with a thrust right across the board to ensure every athlete can do the best to their ability, field or track.
Yeah. Anthony, one of the things that Chris Samuda was called upon to do today is to publish a list of the athletes who've gotten monetary assistance, either through the Olympic Solidarity Program, through the government's assistance. Remember, the government put up a $20 million pool of funds to give each athlete who qualifies for Paris a stipend for the 18 weeks leading up to the Olympics. The people have said, look, publish this list so we can see how much money each athlete has given, so that you can head off any criticism that you have favored this one and that one, you haven't given this one and that one, while at the same time you've given others. Would you agree with the publication of this list of funding to individual athletes who are part of the Olympic team?
I'm not sure that is necessary, but if this is what will ensure transparency, then sure.
Yeah.
You know, the bottom line has been that significant efforts have been made by the Olympic Association in the past to ensure that every athlete is given a great opportunity to perform to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead, George.
Yeah, I'm running out of time, so I've gotten your answer. I want Anthony's answer now. Anthony, do you think that this would be a prescribed course of action? Would you encourage Mr. Samuda to so publish?
I would go further and encourage all federations, really, because you want to be open, you want to be transparent, and in the absence of information, there is a lot of speculation. And based on what has happened over time, it would avoid some of the speculation. It would help. Now, I will acknowledge that there is persons who might be hesitant, but we need to be transparent. We need to make people feel that there is nothing to hide, there's no favoritism. We set the policy, we said this is the guideline and this is how we are going to do the allocation. In the same way the government says they are going to give X million of dollars and each athlete is going to get X, extend it straight across the board.
Yeah.
It avoids a lot of confusion and people speaking as if something Palestine is going on.
Yeah. Don, as one of the preeminent pollsters in this part of the world, you know very much that you can't be led by what social media says. But social media has been tearing the JOA a new one, accusing it, fueled, of course, by what Daniel Thomas has said. They have said that the JOA is withholding funding, only funding track athletes, and look at what the field events have done. What is the injury to the JOA publishing those allocations? John Tom got this. He's gotten this over 4 years. This is the level of assistance we've given to all these athletes. Where is the injury in doing that?
I'm not sure that it is absolutely necessary to do that. I think what is happening right now is, and again, Mr. Lewis alluded to it just now, because there's not been a very clear sense of communication about any of the issues from a number of different levels. And in the absence of good communication, there's going to be a significant degree of speculation.